All right, we are back. This is a preview episode for the 2025 Black Canyon 100K, and I'm not sure if we were talking about it or I saw it somewhere else on the internet, but we finally get to talk about racing again. I feel like there's been 2 or 3 months talking about the business of the sport, all the juiciness around free agency, et cetera, and maybe we will delve into a little bit of that today, but we get to mostly talk about racing. Leah, starting with you, just how's everything going? What's new in your world before we dive into all this?
Yeah, I've been in a lot of conversations with people lately where I'm like just so burnt out on the last like December, January ultra running topics, like from Roy to free agency. And it's just like at the point where I'm over it. So I'm really excited to talk about racing.
But you have news to share.
I do. Yeah. I just, as of tomorrow, February 1st, I re-signed with Lululemon for a multi-year contract. Really excited about it. They've been great partners with me the last couple of years, and just excited to move forward with them. And I think we have a really fun future and a lot of plans this upcoming year.
Any further type stuff, or do you get to sort of choose your own schedule from here on out?
I don't choose my own schedule. I told them what I've got lined up for the year. They're very, very supportive of that, not really pushing me in any specific direction. Definitely like staying in the trail space this year as well. So excited to kind of play a part on that product innovation side of things as well. And the one thing I've been really keen on with them is just like their involvement with community initiatives. I know Steph Flippin can speak similarly, but behind the scenes, she works on a lot of projects. And I think they've been very supportive of everything she's got going on. And that was something that they upped in my recent contract as well, which I'm really excited to, I think, do a lot with Women of the Wasatch here in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And then also try to expand some of the like motherhood scholarships and kind of like daycare scholarships for a lot of the races we have locally.
Right on. By the way, it's weird to ask you guys how you're doing because, like, Leah, I saw you last night. We went for a run together. Brett, we recorded like 3 episodes yesterday, so this is all just for theatrical effect. But Brett, what is new in your world? How's it going, man?
Well, I will be flying down to Phoenix next week. I will be on the ground at a couple different aid stations to do some field commentary work for the 100K. Sweet. And then I will try my best to double back into the 50K on Sunday. Media race.
That worked out pretty well for you last year.
Yeah.
Leah's ducking out on me this year. There's no rematch.
You get stung by a scorpion one time, and it's you don't really want to go back.
That's fair, and I don't care what people say. I'm taking that dub.
Dude, the road to Twisted Fork Glory starts in Black Canyon.
Yeah, I'm racing my way into shape. There has been like not much for training for this one, so it'll be a good just like fitness test. See where we're at. Now we can set some training zones for Twisted Fork after this one.
The conversational pace crowd obviously wants to know what shoes you're wearing. Do you know yet?
I think I'm just gonna wear the Norda 005.
Okay.
Not necessarily because I think it's the best shoe for that course, but because it's the shoe I need to put miles on for review. And it's better than some of the other ones that we are currently testing out. So I'm just going to roll with the 005. And this will actually be a good test to see how well it does on like a super runnable course.
You queued me up perfectly. I'll share a little bit of news on sort of the overall Singletrack front. So it all happened pretty quickly, but we just signed a multi-year partnership with Norda. They're going to be with Singletrack through race coverage, the podcast, and just other special projects. And yeah, super excited about it. We try to do kind of these longer term deals with various category partners. And yeah, everything you said about the 005, I put a lot of miles in that thing. I love it. I kind of love where all their products are headed. I think my favorite shoe is actually, if I can find it here,
other shoulder,
the 003. This
Dude,
is kind
that
of
one has surprised me so much. I've worn that shoe as my daily shoe every single day since I got it. And I have I'm gonna be that dad where I'm gonna be dropping my kid off to freshman year of high school, and I'm like, these shoes are older than you are.
What, strutting around town, people, my eyes are up here, come on.
Yep.
So anyways, a little bit of news there. We'll have more official things to say in the weeks and months to come, but super excited about that. We got to talk Black Canyon though. before we get into the men's and the women's fields, we actually solicited a bunch of listener fan questions on Instagram a week or two ago and got some really good ones. I don't know if we haven't talked about some of these before in previous previews, but I think some of them are good to go over again. One of the top ones here, maybe Leah, starting with you, the question is sort of around course specific strengths and whether this race favors a certain type of ultra runner. Mm-hmm. And I think they want your take here, like just given the profile of the course, what it rewards, can any type of runner come in here and have a day, or do you feel like it really like leans into a specific type of talent?
What I listed for this, I don't think it favors a certain athlete necessarily. My feelings around this question was if the athlete is good, they are good. I think we've seen that with like who has done well here over the last couple years. I think it speaks to the high level competition at Black Canyon as well. Like Hayden Hawks, Rachel Drake, Anthony Costales, Tom Evans, Heather Jackson, like Keely Henninger. They're good at everything. So I think we're going to see something similar this year. I do think at baseline, you need to be fast and you need to be capable of having whatever that pace, faster paces feel easy. But I think if you're fast, you're fast. If you're strong, you're strong. And those are the types of runners that are going to succeed here, the ones that we've seen perform well historically.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it seems like the well-rounded runner has been the one that's had the most success, but we've definitely seen people outside of that category also have success here. But, it seems like one of the things that a lot of these runners do have in common is like how far away you can be from, your top end on especially some of the early parts of the course and still feel comfortable. And, there is definitely that part of like, I don't know, like almost like the coordination aspect where there's times where you're both on the men's and women's, like they're going to be hitting like 6-minute pace or under at times. And it's still windy out there. You have to be a little bit quick on your feet. So you can't just be like steamrolling everything. But yeah, you're running every step of.
I will say though, like I think you need some trail experience to do well here. I don't think we have a ton of people, if any, really coming over from exclusively road backgrounds, but I think we've seen a few people not do well here with just a road background. So I think you need some ability to succeed on the trails and to have shown that and to have shown that you can fight late in a race, because I think that's what Black Canyon really requires.
Yeah, I remember, I guess it was 2 years ago now. I was really excited because John Ranieri was on the start line.
Yeah.
I think, he was this like 212 guy. I think he was training with McCurdy, but he was based in Flag. And I don't think he did a lick of trail running in the buildup. And by the way, I hope John comes back to the sport and dabbles again. And because obviously he's got like amazing raw talent. But yeah, like I think that's so key, Leah. Like you do need, there is a specificity to training for this. You can't just walk in with raw speed. I guess the question that I wanted to throw out to both of you based off that is, do you feel like the goalposts are moving where if you were to perform like a raw speed test on the women's field or the men's field, you would need to be at like a certain level of baseline when it comes to like your marathon time or 10K or whatever to be competitive in this thing? Like on the women's side, do you got to be like a sub 315 marathon, or men's side, it's like if you're not in like sub 240 shape, like forget about it. Are those things relevant here?
I think so.
I think it's way faster than both.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think, on the women's side, we have at least 236 marathoners off the top of my head, and I'm sure there's a few more in that sub 240 range. And I think you probably need to be in that sub 3-hour shape to be getting a golden ticket here on the women's side. I don't know how you feel about the men's side, Brett.
Yeah, I feel like, at least for who I have picked, in my top 3 to 5 on the men's side, they all are capable of training for and probably running, under 220 for the marathon, I bet, or like, hitting like an Olympic trials qualifier. Like maybe they haven't specifically done that, but it's like definitely in their tool bag where they could do it. And I think the same on the women's side too. Like, I don't know if Heather Jackson is trained for and raced just a road marathon, or all of her marathons have come at the end of a swim and a 100-mile bike. But, I'm sure in the middle of, Heather's like triathlon, like peak of her career. I bet if she just dropped the bike and the swim and went all in on the marathon, I'm sure she's at least a 240 marathoner.
At least, yeah. Okay. All right. Follow-up question. Again, this is from the audience. Generally, they're asking, can tactical racing beat pure speed on this course? And I guess they included a follow-up. Does the nature of the Black Canyon course reward those who can stick to a plan? Or is it simply a test of attrition and like who can go the fastest and hold on? Brett, what do you think?
I mean, if we're talking like I'm going to start the race and every single step from the gun is going to be as hard as I can go, that person is 100% going to lose every single time. It's like, and I guess like, is it like, reckless speed or tactics? My answer is yes. Like, you need a little bit of both. Like, I think the tactic is get fit enough where you can be at the front of the pack, almost appear like you're going out recklessly fast, but you're actually not. And then you are in a place, after Black Canyon City or so, where you can start thinking about, when do I make my move? When do I make this race? I think my favorite example is Anthony Costales 2 years ago, when Cole Watson went a little bit early. Tom went with him. Anthony was just hanging out in third, watching all of it. And then, they brought Cole back in. And then after Black Canyon City, Anthony was like, okay, now that I'm here, fourth and beyond, they're gone. The race is the three of us. Now I get to think about when I'm going to make my winning move. So I don't know. I see a scenario where it's a little bit of both.
Do you feel like Cole was time trialing there, or was he racing and he just made a move too early?
He made a move too early.
Yeah.
Like that's all it was. Like, it was just a tactical mistake.
What do you think, Leah, for the women's side?
Yeah, I think
anyone time trialing this thing?
Heather.
Yeah.
I think every time Heather lines up at a race like this, it's a time trial. And we saw that the first year she ran this and last year, and it's evident by how much she's able to run away from the field in the first even like 7 miles. I think the women's field, both years she's run it, have not been within like 80 seconds of her at the first aid station, and that's only like 7 miles in. So she's already gapping them early on. I think we'll see something similar this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see more people trying to stick with her. I think with Golden Ticket races, we see people kind of balancing that line of aggression, but also wanting to be smart. It's really easy to be running quote unquote aggressive at Black Canyon and not really realize the repercussions until later, because it's a net downhill for the first like 20 or so miles. Like on the women's side, like low 7-minute something pace is going to feel quite easy for 20 miles. And then it's going to start feeling not so easy. And I think you need to just be able to like have the strength in that second half of the course to be tactical, but also not bleed too much time back. We saw Heather succeed the first year when she kind of time trialed this. And then the second year, I think she was battling some nutrition mistakes and other things that made her kind of fall back.
Yeah.
Okay. I've got a question then.
Please.
Do you think there's a scenario where Heather goes out hard and people let her go because she's already qualified for Western States? And like, if I think how much defense is going to get played?
Yeah. I think Abby Hall really likes to race. I could see her being somebody that goes. I think MK's likes to race. I could see her going. At JFK, I was expecting Rachel to kind of like run away from Mary in those early miles, and like Mary stuck within like 30 seconds of her. So I could see those 4 people in particular kind of going together.
Yeah. That's definitely the counter argument I was thinking of, is like, well, what about just simply racing? And like, why would I let Heather beat me now when I plan to beat her at Western States?
Yeah. Yeah. And like somebody like Riley Brady too, who also already has a ticket as well. Hopefully we'll see some people kind of just throwing maybe some of their fears with racing out the door and kind of go for it and see what happens with the rest of the field along the way.
I think it's a testament to Black Canyon as an end in and of itself too. People are going there. Yes, obviously there's golden tickets on the line, but it's also just a great place to race. Like it is a congregation of some of the sport's best athletes. It probably will be the second most competitive race on American soil this year. Maybe even the first. It kind of depends on how Western States shakes out, depending on which field we're talking about. It's going to be amazing. And I did hear, I don't want to get into like the fields just yet, but like I was listening to MK Sullivan's Chasing Gold interview with Skylar, and I think her prediction was it's going to take, to get on the women's podium this year, it's going to take a course record. So not only are we going to see a course record set, but we're going to see the entire podium go under course record on the women's side, which I think speaks to what you were saying, Leah.
Totally.
Okay. This is interesting. Again, people put some pretty in-depth thought into these questions. The next one, overhead, is Black Canyon becoming too competitive for rising stars? That's sort of the first part of the question. And they explain, with the race growing in prestige, are we seeing fewer breakthrough performances from lesser known athletes? Has it shifted to being a proving ground strictly for the sports elite? So maybe like the spark notes there is, have you guys been more or less surprised about who has sort of won out at this race and succeeded in the past 2 to 3 years?
It's interesting to me because I think if you get first or second here, that gets eyeballs on you. Or if you're like leading the charge early in the race, like Hans Troyer was last year, that gets eyeballs on you, regardless of how you end up placing. But I'm just speaking about the women's race, for example. Last year, like, Brett, do you know who was fourth place?
Furiously starts Googling.
Well, I think it's interesting because
I don't remember.
It was Jenna Bensko, who I think had like a breakout race last year, getting top 5 at Black Canyon. Like, in theory, should put somebody on watch in the ultra running space, but it didn't. I would say I feel like she's not really a common name in ultra running vernacular, but she had a phenomenal race and a breakthrough performance for her. So I think that speaks to like these 3rd and 4th and 5th place runners who work their way into those positions late in the race. The eyes aren't on them for the bulk of the live stream, and they don't really get the headline and the limelight like they should. But if you're up there early on, or if you end up finishing first and second, I think that this is an opportunity for runners to have these like headlining performances that get them noticed in a way. And I think you can say the same about Lauren Puritz last year. Yes. 3rd place, golden ticket, awesome race. For whatever reason, she still isn't like highlighted to the level that she should be, despite having consecutive podium races in huge races that are super competitive. So yeah, I think to answer your question, it's possible to have like a race performance that is really defining, but I think it's funny how it works out and what position you almost need to be in at certain times.
Man, I fell right into your trap with that one.
Sorry,
Proved
Brett.
you totally right. You lucked out there. No, I agree with you though. And one thing that I was thinking about that's kind of interesting that I feel like we're probably going to start seeing a little bit more is it's hard to really have like a full big peak so many times throughout the year. And I kind of see some scenarios where like some of these people have something to prove. Like this, I'm going all in for Black Canyon. This is my A race. I have nothing beyond that. Whereas you see some of these other like pros go into Black Canyon pretty fit, but they will definitely be fitter in June or August or September. And I think for that reason that has the potential to close that gap just a little bit. Like, you know, we see like Hayden Hawks and Hans Troyer like duking it out. Like Hans is a really good runner, but I don't think I see him going like blow for blow with Hayden at CCC at the end of August. Because I think Hayden still had a lot of fitness to gain throughout the year. And for that reason, that definitely opens up the door a little bit to still have that breakthrough performance at a race like this. And I think a lot of that's just due to it being in early February.
Here's a great example to both of your points. And this is going to be a rhetorical question because I know that you guys probably know the answer to this, but to the audience, do you know who Gabriel Klein is? Gabriel Klein finished 8th at Black Canyon last year and ran 7:51, which in any other year would have been an absolutely breakthrough performance. Probably would have gotten a deal from Hoka the very next day. And it would be one of the greatest what ifs for how the rest of his season would have played out because his entire life probably would have changed. But in the context of last year's race, that only gets you 8th place. And I don't even see anything on his calendar for 2025. I just pulled up his ultra sign up and I don't know what he's doing, but amazing race and nothing to show for it. The only counterexample, and Brett, you mentioned, is Hans Troyer. Like, I don't know why I latched onto him so much. Maybe it's because of his YouTube vlog. But
well,
like
his wild Bandera before
and his wild Bandera,
before Black Canyon.
Nah, that's a good question. Okay, I guess the corollary to this, same person asked, could Black Canyon ever be quote unquote big enough to be a gateway to ultramarathon stardom? So, like, historically, has this race impacted an athlete's career trajectory? Like, an example I always look to is, you think about Hayden Hawks, for example. Everything kicked off for him at Speed Goat. That was like his entry into the sport, and it gave him a huge platform. I think my answer is kind of like yes and no. It depends on the athlete and what they do with it. Because I feel like our answer to the last question was like not necessarily. It can be like part of a momentum builder, but I don't know. What do you think, Leah?
Yeah, I think I agree with your sentiment entirely. I think back to Anthony Costales' performance here a couple years ago, and the fact that he beat Tom Evans was huge. And Anthony was unsponsored at the time. So I think it's like circumstantial too in what the performances mean and like who you beat, how you beat them, how much you beat them by. Is it a course record? Like you mentioned, Gabe's time from last year was incredible, but it was 8th place and 8 minutes separated 3rd through 8th or something like that. So I think it's very much circumstantial and kind of who you're around and when and where.
Yeah, I agree with that. Leah, your Anthony and Tom example, that's actually a great one of the overlap between someone who, like Tom was fitter at Western States than he was at that Black Canyon, but then that opened up the door for Anthony to take down someone like Tom Evans, which just immediately leapfrogged him into like the high, like, oh, you beat Tom Evans, you're now in the conversation to win any race from here on out.
Yes.
And I feel like that was a big defining moment in Anthony's career.
Totally.
That's a fantastic example.
And I think these races do a lot for confidence too, like you mentioned. Not only for like the public's confidence in you, but also that athlete's confidence. Like when Keely Henninger set her course record here a few years ago, she was then gearing up for Western States, and I know it was in her mind that like she could be competitive with Courtney, she could be competitive with Katie, and she was pretty vocal in saying that. So I do think a great performance here definitely means something in the public's eye, and then I think also when it comes to your own personal confidence.
Quick break here. I want to tell you about our presenting nutrition partner for the Singletrack podcast, and that is NAC Nutrition. One of the products that I've been using quite a bit in training for Trans-Gran Canaria is their Ultra Recovery product. I take it about 30 minutes after a hard workout or a long run. A couple factors that are great about it: 4-to-1 carbs to protein ratio, which is ideal for complete recovery. I really like this chocolate hazelnut flavor, so it's really delicious taste, natural ingredients like no GMOs, go check it out at knack.com. NAC is of course spelled NAAK.com, and feel free to use code SingleTrack20 at checkout on their website for 20% off this product. A few more before we get into the women's field. I feel like we've joked about this, but we've also been serious about it in years past. Listener wants to know, have we basically solved the heat equation for races like Black Canyon? Is this going to be a deciding factor in any way? And if there are any issues on race day, is it due to like negligence with all the solutions that are already out there that have been proven out?
I think heat adaptation is important. I think people know it's important. I think where it'll get tricky at Black Canyon is with the 20 miles that you don't have crew at. You can have aid stations, but there's not crew. So I think if any mistakes are made with controlling the conditions for the heat with your race strategy, it's likely going to be in that mile 30 to 50 and might set you back later on.
Yeah, because even on the hottest years, it's really not that hot, but it feels hot because it's February. And it seems like we always hear stories of like, oh, leaving Black Canyon City, they went up and over the climb, and then all of a sudden this person disappeared, where they overheated, etc., so on and so forth. But it almost seems like it wasn't so much the overheating, but just the few degrees temperature difference. They should have adjusted their nutrition plan accordingly.
Yeah.
And then people like don't have enough water. They're like taking on too much food, not enough fluid. didn't account for it, that then, will make the stomach go sideways. So, yeah, I think, Leah, like you said, it's just like you need to just plan accordingly. And yeah, there's that 20-mile section, but at the same time, it's like, I just don't feel like this one is that difficult to figure out from a heat mitigation standpoint.
No, like I think from observing on the ground as a field commentator the last couple years, I think Cole Watson was one of the people I saw suffering from the heat the most at, I think it was Black Canyon City and maybe at Table Mesa after that. But heat doesn't seem like a gigantic problem for a lot of the runners. And looking at the weather right now for Saturday, it'll be 66 degrees and sunny in Black Canyon City, which is warm for people coming out of winter, but not that bad when all is said and done.
This is more just like a funny observation, but the Instagram algorithm, at least in the ultra running sphere, is loving heat suit training reels. I have counted 8 athletes posting heat suit training reels, the latest one being Joe McConaughey. The algorithm is loving this stuff. So I'm not even counting the David Roche content. Like, they are loving these Black Canyon specific treadmill, easy run heat suit training vids.
So on point of Joe, he's running Black Canyon. Really excited to see him there. And I really liked a paragraph of his post that he made, because I think it really contrasts a lot of what we're seeing in the space right now when it comes to vlogs and Instagram posts. And I'm going to share it because I think it's really relatable.
Please.
He said, the truth of trail running, at least for me, is that it isn't a purely professional enterprise. I have a lot of things I love, so I have to fit training with my lifestyles. Maybe that makes me want it less or not be hardcore. Perhaps I could spend hours and dollars chasing marginal gains, but that's okay. And I think that's really nice for a lot of the athletes coming into this who have a lot going on. They're kind of getting consumed by athletes who are like throwing it all at the wall right now and seeing what sticks, and have like a lot of time and energy to do so. But I think he really represents the balance that a lot of people lining up struggle with.
For sure.
Do you think we see any blue collar runners on either the men's or women's podiums this year? You don't have to say who yet. It could just be a yes or no.
That's a good question. So when you say blue collar, you mean somebody that's also working full time?
In practice or in attitude?
Yeah.
That's
no, you're not allowed to be a blue collar professional runner. Of just
everyone wants to be blue collar in theory.
No, you're not. No, we're just like the full time, person who doesn't run full time. Like I everything you just said about Joe's post, I love that. But will that person make it on the podium this year?
Yeah, that is a fantastic. I'm looking at the women's field and I'm like, I don't know.
I think a good one on the men's side, and again, we'll talk about it more in depth, but I think an obvious one is Seth Ruling. He is, his 9 to 5, he's a nurse, and then he fits all his training in around that. That's a pretty cool story. Although I would argue
he said on
he's
the pod
still trained as a nurse because all that time on feet. Sorry?
Didn't he say on the pod that he had reduced his work hours?
Okay. We're not going to let facts get in the way of my argument, Brett.
Well, I don't know. That might not be a fact either. I could just be making that up. So Seth could just write in to Singletrack's DMs that he's been working 80 hours a week.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm actually, like, the list that I have for both fields, a lot of these people seem like they're pretty deep in the sport, and they're maybe coaching a little bit on the side to supplement.
I got one.
My answer, I got one. Do it too. I'm not going to say what I was just, yes, I have a blue collar runner in one of my podiums.
Okay. That's good. I'm going to call out Lauren Puritz. She's a OBGYN and
not a blue collar job.
Not a blue collar job. But she is extremely busy and she's a mom. So she's got a lot going on.
Yeah. No, that absolutely counts.
Okay, one last category before we get into the women's field. Brett, we can call this sort of like a conversational pace corner question, but I think people just want your take or your expectations around shoes at this race. Like, in terms of like the number of super trainers versus super shoes on the podium, top 10s, wherever you want to go with this. What are some things that you're going to be looking out for as a field reporter on race day?
I mean, I think really I think all the podiums are going to be full of super foams at a minimum. Probably a lot of carbon, because that's just where we see, like, there's just not that many non-carbon super foam trail shoes out there. But Hooper last year wore the Adidas Adios Pro 3, like in like heinous snow, mud, all that stuff. Still got second. He only lost to Hayden by 8 minutes, wearing full-blown road super shoes. So I think what I take away from that is wear the fastest shoe that you can wear without falling or rolling an ankle, which, like, for me probably wouldn't be a road super shoe, because that's impressive to be doing that in the second half, or last year both halves. But I think that you need some fast shoes for this course.
Do you think Riley Brady will wear a road super shoe after seeing success at Javelina?
I don't see why they wouldn't wear that Vaporfly again.
Yeah.
Why not?
I shared a couple miles with them in Boulder a few weeks ago, and they were wearing the Speed Ultra.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most perfect shoes for this course, assuming you get the sizing right, get the fit right, and it doesn't jack up your ankles, because it's like pretty narrow into it. But I wore it for the 60K last year, and I was like, oh yeah, this would absolutely be my 100K shoe for that race.
Any other things you're looking out for from a gear standpoint on race day?
I'm curious just where, like, the classic handheld versus vest kind of conversation. But last year, especially in the second half of the year, it really seemed like there was a renaissance of drinking fluids again. Like 2023, I feel like carbs were really hot, and like 2024, carbs still stayed really hot, but now they got paired with drinking a lot of fluid, and a lot of times it's more than just 2 handhelds. Especially like some of the later sections of the course coming out of Black Canyon City. Maybe we see combos of both, but I'm curious, because it's funny how, like, you wear the pack to carry more fluid, but then you have another layer on, it's a little bit warmer.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Interesting.
Something I'm thinking about a bit is this is kind of along the same lines with trends, but are the athletes who are newly sponsored by a brand, this is likely going to be their first race and first big race wearing whatever that gear is from said new brand. So it's likely that they haven't had the opportunity to race long in it, to get a lot of practice, especially if they're moving from a brand that they've completed a contract with at the end of last year. It's only been 2 months of likely wearing something. So I think that is kind of an interesting dynamic that you don't think about often. So that might be like Hans Troyer, Katie Asmuth. I think Lindsay Allison might be moving to a new brand as well. Some athletes like that.
Yeah. I mean,
that's a good point. That's kind of like, there's a lot of pressure there to be like, I've got all new shoes, all new kit. I've never raced in it before. Hopefully I've had enough time to like train and get everything dialed. But like, and also, I mean, you really hope that it all works, or else it doesn't make your sponsor look great either if you don't have a good race because of like some sort of gear thing. Who's either racing with their new sponsor for the first time or racing without their old sponsor for the first time? Like you said, like Hans Troyer, like I know he did kind of like a soft launch at the Bandera 50K in Ultra.
Is Jared Hazen still with Solomon?
I don't know. Think so.
Okay.
But I don't know. There is no facts associated with that claim of mine.
That was the first one that came to mind for me.
Like Mary Denholm did kind of the soft launch at JFK, but then they did the team announcement now for 2025. So
Darren Thomas is no longer with Solomon. I know that.
Yes, like what will Darren be? Like Katie is no longer with Saucony. So like, what will Katie? Not in the 100K, but in the 50K. Like Chris Myers is no longer with Solomon. Like, will we see a debut kit from him, or will it be like hodgepodge, like normie clothes?
Well, Leah or Brett, I don't know if either one of you knows this, but do you typically know how much of a window an athlete has to test shoes? Like in, for example, the last 3 months of their contract, if they know things are expiring, they're going to re-sign. Can they start receiving shoes? And like, would these people have 4 or 5 months pre-Black Canyon to get miles in?
Yeah, in theory, they could. Depends on when the conversation started. But I'd say like athletes kind of start conversations July, August, September, October, November. So depends on when they started. But say somebody was like blindsided by the ending of a contract, that probably didn't give them too much time. But I'd imagine if somebody was being courted, they had a few months.
Okay.
Yeah, which I mean, still isn't like it's like probably enough time, but not a ton of time, especially if like, some of these contracts that end, at the end of December, conversations for them getting renewed, they oftentimes start, like you said, like July, August, but there's usually like sometimes I've seen clauses in contracts where it's like technically you can't be accepting offers or presenting us competitor offers till October. So then it's like you're not actually running in the product until October, November in some cases.
Yeah, and I think what's tough too is like Black Canyon is such specific terrain that like not a ton of the field trains on regularly. So I think a lot of people are in winter right now. So winter, treadmill, road, snow running doesn't exactly like your miles on that type of terrain is going to be quite different than the miles on desert terrain.
Yeah, I'm getting blisters no matter what.
Same.
Yeah, there's just too many rocks.
I will say, just having learned this through conversational pace the last 2 years, it's not easy to transition shoes, let alone brands. It is a tough proposition.
You guys transition shoes like every single week.
You have to relearn how to run. You feel like a baby deer sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's very true, and that's one thing I've learned running in a different pair of shoes just about every week. Is sometimes it's like, oh yeah, this feels like a good shoe for me, but then other times I'm like, I don't know how to run in the shoe, and I need 3 weeks for it to feel normal. And it's like, damn, what if that was my new sponsor? Because I took the bag and just give me the money. I'll just make my feet deal with the shoes.
Yeah, and Katie Asmuth brought this up on one of our recent recordings on the Trail Network podcast, but she brought up a good point about like when a brand has multiple good shoes too, it's like you want to try a few runs out in the one shoe, a few long runs out in the other shoe, and like that ends up being tough to like get the appropriate like long runs and miles in, trying all the shoes and like doing your due diligence to figure out what will be the best shoe for your race day terrain. So I think that makes it complicated too.
Yeah, and then you just get in your head when you're like 8 miles in and something's maybe imperfect, and you're like, damn, maybe I should have worn the other one.
Yeah.
All right, moving into the women's field, we have a bunch of categories here that we're going to kind of share across both fields. But Leah, just broad strokes overhead, what are you most excited about with this field? Like when you see this ultra sign-up list, what are some things that stick out? What are you excited about?
There's a lot of returners, of returning top 10 in this field. People like Tara Dower, Shea Aquilano, Lauren Puritz, a lot of people with experience out here. And then also several people who have either gotten or currently have golden tickets in the past, or maybe received a golden ticket and turned it down. So we know that they definitely have golden ticket potential. People like MK Sullivan, Lauren Puritz, again, Riley Brady, Heather Jackson, Erin Clark. So Abby Hall too. Geez, like a lot of the kind of heavy hitters that you're thinking about in the women's field have gotten golden tickets in the past. So I think we kind of have these categories of the people who just quite haven't broken into that like top 5 at Black Canyon before, and the people who have like dominated at a variety of golden ticket races and have made their way to Western states. A lot of really fast people, and then a lot of people who are debuting, or several people who are debuting at the 100K distance, like Mary Denholm and Christina Mascarenas. I guess Mary has run 50 miles and 100 miles, but we haven't seen her at 100K just yet.
Oh my gosh, I totally overlooked Christina.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome. She's super strong, super strong. All right, first category here. We're going to kind of be bouncing, but dark horse speculation. So who is one or two, in your opinion, underrated athletes that you are on the lookout for to quote unquote shock the field?
This, I don't think she should be underrated at all, but I think because this is a largely North American field, she will not have a lot of eyes on her coming into this race, but that is Lin Chen. Lin was 4th this past year's UTMB, running 24 hours and change, which is a podium, if not winning time most years. And then was also in the top 3, top 4 at Western States until she had the most excruciating looking blister / sole of her foot peel off
Her
entirely at
heel
the river.
came off.
Yeah. So I know Lynn's been on the course for the last week or two. She's had some fun little social media to follow along with, but like we saw at Western States that she can just rage and has no fear when it comes to going with like some of the leaders. And I think we'll see her run similarly here. So I bet there's not a lot of eyes on her just because this is her first time here. Hasn't raced in the desert like this before. So excited to see that. And then kind of lesser known, but Sawyer Magnet. She's
you took my good dark horse.
She's collecting segments right now.
Yeah. So she's from Virginia originally, I believe, or maybe Arizona, but she spends time in both places. I think she was a Liberty University / David Horton recruit to the sport and has spent a lot of time on the East Coast doing several of his races. But she has not competed in a very competitive field like this yet. And like you guys mentioned, she's been slaughtering some course records on Strava along the course over the last month or so. So
I think big crowns.
I'm very excited to see kind of where she positions herself in the field because she still is relatively new to the sport despite being in it for a few years, and she will be stepping up in distance here as well.
Yeah, 23. So definitely on the fairly young side. Not really a dark horse. Definitely not a dark horse to us, but I just feel like a person that like needs to be talked about. That I feel like just hasn't. A lot of people who are newer to following the sport don't know how good at running Abby Hall is.
Yeah.
It was almost kind of like Rachel Drake, right around when she had Lou. Like the pre-COVID Rachel, there was like a lot of people who didn't follow the sport pre-COVID, and then we're like, oh wow, who's this Rachel person? I'm like, no, Rachel's always been world class. I feel like because Abby's had a pretty long recovery after a broken leg, and just getting that momentum back. Which, looking at her training on Strava, I would absolutely say that Abby's fully back and probably about to destroy this course. But I think she's going to be one of those people that this might be the first time they've seen her race on the live stream.
I think so too. UTMB this year.
Here's an interesting question. After the fact, will we be able to correlate time spent on the course pre-race with finishing times and like podiums and stuff like that? Like you think about all the time Sawyer spent out there. Abby has effectively had like a 3-month training camp on this course. What do you think? Is that going to be an important factor here?
Do you include people who have raced this in the past?
That's a good question.
That's a good time on course.
That is, yeah.
I think that counts.
Yeah, I think we'll see at least 60 to 70% of the women's top 10 be people who have been in the top 10 before and or people who have spent time on the course this year.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Because Heather Jackson's been training out of Tucson. Is that right? She has a house down there. So probably has made the trek over to the course a couple times. Go run on it. Just familiarize yourself. I think it helps. I don't think it's absolutely necessary. Definitely helps though. Like you guys could go down to like St. George and get in just similar conditions, which I think is, I think that might be more important than actually getting out on the course. It's like, if you can at least give yourself a couple weekends where you got to run in some sun and a little bit of warm and dirt.
This is for me, this is sort of a borderline dark horse pick because I think you could also have argued based on her 2024 season that she was like also a borderline 9-10 UROI candidate, but Lindsay Allison raced 12 times last year, won like Sonoma, I think 3rd or 4th at the Broken Arrow 46K, solid speed goat, has a lot of range, and I think could be in the mix here next weekend. So I don't know. I don't know how familiar people are with her, but if I was a UROI voter, I would have possibly put her in like a 10th spot this past year. So,
How do you think Emily Mann is going to do?
I think she will do well. So the races that stand, or I guess pseudo races that stand out was Trans Rockies, She took that overall this year for women. I know her and Shea Aquilano and Brittany Peterson shared a lot of miles there, but she ended up winning that, I think, when it was all said and done. She's, I would say, like from my experience at Run Rabbit, which is just like an N of one experience, she didn't race super aggressively there. She was really, really controlled in how she executed that day, but ran like flawlessly start to finish and conserved well. I'd be a little nervous with her applying a similar strategy to Black Canyon. Like, I think she would have a lot left in the tank if she raced similarly. So I hope we see her cue off of Shea, since they've shared a lot of miles together, and kind of ride that energy with a late surge then, with how she finished Run Rabbit this year, and move her way up and probably pick up some carnage like she picked up me. I was carnage.
Shea is the other person who's already in Western States.
Oh yeah,
because she got in off the lottery. So there's three on the women's side who are already in Western States.
I got to throw one more into the mix, and this is a shout out to, well, an ex-Salt Laker, but Jane Maas, who is now in Boulder and has strung together a really consistent, solid training block out there the last 3 to 4 months. I think maybe the question mark for her in the past has purely just been, like, again, being able to string together consistency, but I think she's incredibly naturally talented, had some pretty good races last year. Coached by someone who I think is really actually impressive in the ultra trail scene, Jimmy Picard. Great strength, kind of hybrid coach. And I would not be surprised to see her like well into the top 10 at this race, just based on like comparing her numbers that she's putting up in Boulder to other contenders in the field. But I don't think she's quite had a result yet that makes her a figurative household name in ultra yet. But really strong when she was here in Salt Lake, and good friends with Grayson Murphy. Really, strong.
Yeah, and she had a really solid Javelina 100K this past year. I think she was neck and neck with Hannah. No, Flowers from, what's her first name?
Erica.
No, I'm getting it wrong. But
okay.
She's from Colorado Springs.
Gotcha. All right. Next category here. There's a lot. Well, I'm going to bunch together a couple, but basically it's most entertaining racer in the field. So beyond the competition, who's bringing the energy, the personality, the flair, the attitude, the strategy to make this thing more exciting? What do you got, Leah?
Heather's really fun to watch race. You never know, like, what's going to happen. I think last year when on our preview episode, we were talking about her and Rachel Drake battling, and I think most of us had her coming out on top. She's really fun to see, like, how aggressively she'll race and like if she sticks it. So I think I feel very similarly again this year of like, can she nail it once more like she has in the past?
Okay.
Yeah, I wrote down Heather Jackson is bringing the front running competition. Katie Asmuth is bringing the energy.
Yeah, and Tara Dower's bringing the blood.
Yep. That's those are like the entertainment categories. But Katie always brings so much stoke to every race she's in. Like at Western, we all run Western States. When you're coming into the Quarry Road aid station at mile 90, and you hear the aid station like 45 minutes before you get there, you think it's around the corner, every corner, and then that's kind of like when you're at the aid station, you can hear Katie coming in, and you're like, oh, she's right around the corner, but then it's actually like 20 minutes away. I like that energy.
I'm going MK Sullivan here because she had a false start at this race last year and then went on to sort of build confidence, getting that golden ticket at the Canyons 100K, or at least finishing on the podium. Is coming off, I think she win like the non-professional race at the New York City Marathon, ran like 2:36, I think.
Yeah.
So
it was awesome.
She's as fast as pretty much anyone in this field. And I don't think she has a confidence problem. I think that like she's willing to mix it up with anybody. And if I had a stone cold lock, in addition to someone like Heather Jackson setting the pace, I have a feeling that she's going to be right there with her, and she'll be a part of that front pack for as long as she can hold it.
She's just got to watch those ankles.
Yep. Yeah. I like that MK has just a lot of trail running experience in general, and she's also pairing that with being extremely fast. So she's got experience in like Golden Trail Series, 50K, 100Ks now too and have shown success. So I think she pairs it all together really nicely. And I think she can kind of match different levels of energy and different types of like pacing out on the course really well.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Next category, we're calling this legacy race. Are there any top contenders that are running to either cement their legacy or bounce back from a disappointing season? I'll go first here, and I'm more interpreting this from an injury context, but I put Katie Asmuth just because she's been out of it for a year plus. Again, if you are just new to the sport, she's a perennial top contender at Western States. She's gotten a golden ticket before, and I'll just be really curious to see where she's at physically, mentally for this race. Is she hungry to get back to States? Does she have what it takes to kind of mix it up at the front? I'll be really curious. And like you guys were saying, really, really entertaining, great personality. So there won't be a lack of entertainment.
Yeah. And like a fiery competitor as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Katie likes racing, or at least that's how I perceive her at races. I'm like, you like this. And like,
You love this.
yeah. So, another person that, definitely had a pretty non-existent 2024 is Annie Hughes.
Oh, that was mine.
Oh, sorry. but then the question that I'm now bringing up from the last time she races there, I'm like, is she here to throw down, or is she just here so she doesn't get fined?
Yeah.
I wish that was a bigger story. I feel like it just was in our little orbit and no one ran with it.
I know. Maybe had that happened like last year instead of the year before, it would have gotten more press. The trail running world just wasn't ready for that sort of drama yet.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I guess I've thought of one since Brett stole mine. This is different, but Tara Dower, I would say. So she had this like huge performance on the Appalachian Trail with her FKT, and she's been very vocal about wanting to get a golden ticket to Western States and like telling Ultra like, hey, my goal next year is just like to race and to win. So like curious to see like with the big like following that she's gathered over the last year, and then her new contract with Ultra, kind of like what that looks like, that energy behind her, and like her speed. She ran her fast marathon last year. She also knocked out a pretty snappy 50K at the end of December too. So she can move fast, and she's done well here before. Curious to see like with the top level speed we have here, kind of how she stacks up.
Yeah, I feel like if she can make that pivot from the AT to Black Canyon in, I guess it'd be less than, would it be about 6 months?
Yeah, roughly.
6-ish months. That would be an amazing turnaround. I don't really have a deep understanding of exercise phys, but that seems like a pretty fast pivot to like totally different systems.
I just like that you called it exercise fizz.
Is that the new soda? Is that the new hydration sponsor for Black Canyon? Exercise fizz?
Prebiotics, postbiotics, midbiotics.
This episode brought to you by Exercise Fizz.
Courtney Olson.
Antibiotics.
Courtney, can I please have an Exercise Fizz t-shirt?
Make that 3.
Yes. I think, did we just start a brand?
I think so. This is really good.
That would be such a
good. And it has
name.
to be like FIZZ.
Yeah. It's like the anti-Flota.
Oh my god. I'm gonna write this down. Exercise Fizz. We do not.
Dude, who would be our first brand ambassador? Who should we sign first?
It needs to be somebody that drinks a lot of soda and races.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I don't know.
That'll be a question about it. If we're building
David
this exercise, David Laney, yeah.
He drinks Coke. Like that's his primary fueling source for like pretty much every ultra. Like once he gets past 5 hours.
I think that's Claire Gallagher too. So I think they would be great brand ambassadors for Exercise Fizz. So hit us up, guys.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Dude, this is great. Yeah, this is awesome. Okay.
Trademark. I don't know if that's how that worked, but calling it trademark. So no one listening can steal that.
Trademark.
Touch blue, make it true.
So yeah, and I mean, to give Tara additional credit, she had a pretty good race here last year. I think was it 6th place, 6th, 7th? I think she was definitely in the top 10.
Yeah. I know one year she was top 10, the other year she was just outside of it.
Okay. So yeah, she does have sort of this track record of being fairly rangy. She's talented at a lot of different sort of demands. All right, Lee, are there any ultra running rivalries that we should be aware of in this women's field? Like I had one written down that is kind of recent for the men's field, but I don't know if there's any high or low key beefs.
I really don't think so. Everybody's way too nice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
we could just like make up some beef.
We've got a few people who were like Erin Clark and Lauren Puritz were battling it out at Javelina quite a while, and I think they ended up 3rd and 4th place. And they're both on a golden ticket hunt, so that'd be cool to see. Kind of, they're definitely not enemies though. But
I'm just going to go ahead and pit Mary Denholm and MK Sullivan against each other because they're both fast marathoners.
Yeah, I like that.
Let's just invent that right here.
That's a good one.
That's a good rivalry. Well, have they ever even raced each other?
No.
They're about to be rivals.
Yeah, like the trials.
Yeah. Just like, hi, nice to meet you. I'm now your rival.
How about maybe the better question is, are there any particular matchups that you're excited about? The fact that like there are 2 people on the start line and you're excited to see who wins that battle.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the MK and Mary.
The MK and Mary for me is one that I'm really interested in. Especially with Mary coming off such an impressive JFK and like seeing her bounce back midway through the race and showing like that ability to close pretty hard.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's really like, honestly, it's Heather Jackson versus the field.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For me, like that's like, I don't have any reason to believe that Heather's going to do anything different other than go out hard and just set the tone. So it's just like, who's going to match that?
Mm. I will say though, like Heather hasn't exactly closed fast yet at this race. So I think if people are in close distance to her, like even within 10 minutes at Table Mesa, I think she should feel threatened.
Mm-hmm. And there are definitely some people in this field who should be within 10 minutes of Heather Jackson at Table Mesa.
Yeah.
Do you believe, so this is another segment, fastest split, who's going to throw down the most impressive segment of the course? Where will the quote-unquote Strava flex happen? Do you think that Heather's going to own that at some point in the race, like Bumblebee to Table Mesa or something like that?
I was going to say like start to Bumblebee.
I think start to Bumblebee for sure. Yeah.
Or what will also be interesting is just comparing, because the Sunday race is now just a 50K that ends at the staging area or whatever. It'll be very interesting to just compare the 100Ks, like 50K split, to the 50K finishers.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of hard to do that last year with the 60K.
I would say historically too, at least on the women's side, men's side might trend a little differently, but the women's 100K tends to run faster on every segment than the women's 60K at Black Canyon.
Yeah, because like I got 3rd in the 60K last year, and I think I was something like 10 or 8 minutes slower to 50K than Hayden Hawks and Hans Troyer were in their 100K.
Wow.
It was like, and I was like trying pretty hard. I was like, damn, I wasn't even close to them.
I just have a Heather Jackson split since we were talking about her start to Bumblebee. She does hold, at least from just looking at Travis Longcar's Fantasy Free Trail splits. Definitely go check that out for Black Canyon. He has such a good repertoire of results. But Heather holds the fastest 2 times from start to Bumblebee, running 2:17 and 2:18. And last year she had Rachel gapped by 3.5 minutes by that point.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty significant. I feel like, I mean, Heather probably knows those splits and probably will not be slower than those.
No. Like, I think if she was only slower last year by 40 seconds over her 2023 time, and that was due to the conditions.
Mm-hmm. Which conditions this year are looking like they're going to be pretty good.
Perfect, yeah.
No terrible first 8 miles.
Yeah, one of the best places to watch the race, in my opinion, is it's like 2 or 3 miles after, is it Deep Canyon Ranch, down by the river?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool spot.
It was really cool to see at that point in the race. It was like Heather up on Rachel by maybe a minute or two. And why am I blanking? But anyways, like you see a lot happens right there. That is such a pivotal point in the course. It's very cruxy. Okay, few other, maybe one or two categories before we get to picks. Leah, anyone on the international scene that we should be familiar with for fantasy free trail purposes?
I think Lin Chen's the main one. And then our Canadians, Emily Mann and Sarah Bergeron LaRouche, I would say are our biggest like Canadian contingents. And then Aroa CO as well. Aroa, I forgot to mention her. She's a past golden ticket winner as well, and she runs for Kraft. And she got a golden ticket back in 2022 at Canyons. Oh, and Valerie Arsenal, also a Canadian, and she recently just had an incredible performance at JFK. So yeah, definitely some good Canadians up in here.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure we'll find out more in the next couple of days, but injury watch, is anyone on the start list that's actually not racing?
So I don't know. Riley Brady doesn't share everything, I don't think. So they've either had like a slight drop off or they're just going ever so slightly Strava dark occasionally. So that's the only one that I was like, interesting.
Yeah, going Strava dim is kind of an interesting strategy.
Yeah.
Where I'm just throwing the dimmer switch on and I'm just letting you people see some of my runs, which may or may not be my hardest runs of the block. Maybe it looks impressive to you, but it's actually not impressive to me at all. That's just an easy run.
I've been messing around with being Strava dim lately, and it is kind of nice.
Yeah, me too.
How do you
just
know
kidding,
which?
I haven't. I'm just not running that much.
How do you decide which stuff to publish and not publish? Is my question. Is it like the social runs that you publish and the workouts?
I publish everything social, and every social thing I do. But honestly, I post most things. I think, our friend Caleb Olson's been pretty Strava dim lately too, and I think he posts social things.
Yes. Okay. All right. Our picks for the podium, and maybe if you want to make distinctions around golden tickets, like if someone is on the podium but doesn't take a ticket, Leah, starting with you.
We should clarify 3 golden tickets here at this race.
Yep.
They will roll down to 6 if there are people who already have a golden ticket.
Is that new this year? Didn't it used to be 5? It would roll down to 5?
It would until they started issuing 3.
Okay.
And then it's changed to 6.
Okay.
Yep, so they added. So I'm trying to think of a scenario where not all the golden tickets get used. So it's like Heather Jackson, Riley Brady, and Shay go 1, 2, 3, and then someone in 4, 5, 6 declines a ticket.
Yeah.
And then one doesn't get used.
Yeah.
Not impossible, but I would say pretty
that
unlikely.
That happened at UTMB a couple years ago on the was it the men's side? Women's side, yeah.
This just doesn't. This isn't really a decline the ticket kind of race.
No. I've got nothing written down for my picks here, so I'm just gonna go start with the number 5 and then go backwards and hope I've got some people to fill those spots. Okay, number 5. Lauren Puritz. Number 4. Let's see here. We'll go with Riley Brady. Number 3. MK Sullivan. Number 2, Abby Hall. Number 1, Lin Chen.
Whoa.
Okay.
I guess.
Okay. Man.
Probably couldn't regurgitate that top 5 if you asked me to. So we're going with that.
Yeah, well, oh crap. I forgot. I didn't count to 5 correctly. I only have 4 written down.
I forgot Heather in there, but
that's
the risk we gotta take.
Okay. That's Leah's spicy take. No Heather. I just have 4 because I have the golden tickets plus one person who's already in Western States.
Nice, let's hear it.
So starting with 4th place, I have Katie Asmuth snagging a golden ticket, gaining entry to Western States. 3rd, I have Mary Denholm. 2nd, I have Abby Hall. And 1st, I have Heather Jackson.
No MK?
I do not have MK in my top 4. Yeah, this is when you started listing the names, I was like, oh, this is one of those top fives where like there's people. This is a good race. There's like
Right.
there's
I
not
think the
an
women's
obvious.
race is better than the men's race, if I'm being completely honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might have said that too.
I'm gonna say a couple things before I give my picks. This is just a general prediction. I think in part because of at least the weather that we're seeing 9 days out, and also because I think people are going to be more prepared than ever before. I think we're going to see a lower than usual number of drops.
Okay.
I also think just because it's an impressive race to finish 12th at, for example, I could see someone who's in a podium position for a long time hit a rough patch and still tough it out.
Yeah.
And I think that that's going to happen across both the women's and the men's fields. But anyways, my women, I'm only going to go 4 deep here because that's what I think is going to be impacted for golden ticket. I've got Abby Hall in 4th. I've got Heather Jackson in 3rd. I've got Mary Denholm in 2nd, and I've got MK taking the win. With Heather in 3rd, the ticket goes to Abby. So we've got MK, Mary, and Abby.
That'd be a sweet collection.
And I love those storylines.
Those are great additions to Western States. Another thought I had here was I think the women's field this year is going to be very similar to the men's field from last year, where like 3 through 8 are separated by like 5 to 8 minutes. I think it was 3 through 7 was like 5 minutes last year. 3 through 8 was like 8 minutes. So I think that golden ticket hunt is not going to be decided, or like that 3rd, 4th spot is not going to be decided until that last aid station to the finish.
Oh, one thing that I'm very excited for this year is there's going to be an abundance of daylight for the women's finish, because last year the start got pushed 2 hours.
Oh, yeah.
And then it was starting to get dark right as the top women were coming in. And a lot of people didn't have headlamps for the final few miles. And like, I mean, it messed things up from a spectator standpoint, because like it was like the drones, all they saw was either nothing or a headlamp. So it's hard to see who's coming in, because we got a really good, I mean, yeah, the live stream is so dialed with that final like mile of the course. So I'm just, it's looking like the race is probably going to start on time this year. So
I think so.
I'm excited for an abundance of light at the finish.
I'll just want to say one more thing. And I know we didn't talk a ton about Mary Denholm, but for context, Leadville winner, great JFK finish just behind Rachel Drake. And I think you could reasonably say, how does her skill set translate to a race like Black Canyon? I do think that this course just enough fits her skill set, and that's part of why I have her in 2nd. But I think it's going to be interesting. And I think this is going to be one of those races that, you know, puts her under a bigger spotlight, bigger stage. Curious to see how things turn out, but
yeah,
she'd be a great addition to States, I think.
Yeah, I think like of all the people's training of this field, hers is like the most impressive on paper. I think the one thing I'd be concerned about with her is like just the technical, like how technical and just like tough it gets in that last like half to third. She's very good at like the runnable stuff, and she's shown that at her race successes. I think with the winter that Colorado's been having, it looks like she's been doing a lot of like road and treadmill running. And I just haven't seen her on like techie terrain yet. And not that Black Canyon is overly technical, but I think that would be my one reservation.
Okay, fair. Brett, men's field, broad overhead, just thoughts on this thing?
Well, it's pretty wide open. I mean, we had a bit of breaking news.
Breaking news.
Right before we started.
Devastating.
I know on Instagram we saw Anthony Costales has had to withdraw from the race, which is a bummer. Because he was, like, full disclosure, he was my pick to win the race. And with Anthony out, because this was like minutes before we started recording, I like deleted his name from the top of my podium. But then with Anthony not in the race, it actually, in my opinion, I think it kind of changes the dynamic of the whole field. Because not that I thought Anthony was going to be the person to like set the pace at the front and just like be like, I'm the dude. But at least in the second half, I have a feeling his plan was going to be like, I'm the dude. And I don't know who
I am him.
in this. Yeah, like I don't know who is him in the second half of the race now that Anthony's not in it. Like there's a whole bunch of people who are plenty fit enough to do it, but like we were talking about it before we started recording, who in this field has a previous win on a stage this big? And Leah, you had said Eli Hemming, which, you know, we won OCC this year.
I just thought of another one.
Can we put some respect on Tim Tollefson's name? I mean, for God's sakes here.
Yeah. Seth Rolling too, JFK. I forgot about him.
Okay. Yeah, so Seth, JFK, like Eli, OCC, Tim's had a whole bunch. Tim's the only one, I guess, then maybe who's got that big win at least the 100K distance. He's got that familiarity. That's why I just think like the pack dynamic of this race, I think does get shifted a lot with Anthony out.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be like a bunch of chickens running around with their heads chopped off.
Well, obviously Scott Trayer's won golden ticket. Sorry, second place. Second place. Yeah, no, he doesn't have a big win. That's right. And we were talking about Jared. Jared does not have he's won Sonoma, but yeah, okay. All right, first category, legacy race, Brett. Like, do you see anyone here? This is like a legacy moment, or they're bouncing back from something.
Well, Tim Tollefson and Seth Ruling didn't have great second halves of 2024. I don't know, at least per ultra sign up, like I don't know if Jupiter Carrera Casas raced anything past Western states last year.
He raced like a marathon, like a high mountain, like volcano, Mexico marathon.
Okay. Yeah. But not like any like big stage races, super competitive ones. So those were the three that I had written down for like a little bit of a bounce back, but a lot of the people in the field are like coming off of pretty good years, seemingly pretty good training blocks. Do you have any? Either of you?
I mean, I was just singing Tim's praises, but I think this will be an interesting race. His latest Instagram post, I'm going to pull this up because I thought that the caption was funny. Give me 1 second here. But
I do think Tim fits this category well. Like, I think he's extremely fit for this one. Not that he hasn't been extremely fit for other ones, but he seems really focused. And he had a great race here last year. I think his positioning was like a product of then that like top 10 just being really close. So he didn't get as many eyes on his performance, but he had a really solid day. And I feel like that was a good confidence boost for this year's race to tell him, okay, like, you know what you can do here. He's been in like St. George. He was in St. George for quite some time, doing a lot of training. So I think he's been on a lot of similar terrain too.
Training with Anthony a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, this Instagram post, it's a photo of him, I think, crossing the Mile 40 River last year at the race. Caption says, quote, "Gonna throw the kids into the deep end, hope they can swim. Right foot, left foot." And he also, Tyler Green, made a post yesterday sort of about being in his age 41 year and being ready to sort of crack the skulls of the 20 and 30-year-old people in the race. And I think Tim is in his age 40 year this year. I think he turns 40 at some point in the year. So, he's definitely embracing sort of his status. And the training has looked great. But, I think for a lot of reasons, constellation of factors, but, one of them being just how much he's invested in Mammoth Trail Fest. There's many more, I would say, competing factors to training and racing than maybe there were, I don't know, if I had to guess, 7 or 8 years ago. So yeah, but he seems like he's in it. 2 great races last year, Black Canyon and Canyons, kind of was in the hunt for both. And nothing to indicate that there's like any steep regression. I wouldn't be surprised if he's on the podium actually.
So yeah, that actually brings up kind of an interesting thought. So we've got, I think, was it 5 or 6 of the top 11 are returning from last year. And I think all of them but Jupiter would consider this year's race an opportunity to bounce back. Not because they had bad races last year, but if anything, it's that they had great races, but disappointing like finish places. And it's
Yeah.
like, and then when you go back and look at it, or if they go back and watch the live stream, you're like, oh, I see exactly what happened. I wasn't aggressive enough early on, and I didn't take the risk to put myself in a position to win the race. And as hard as I closed, Hayden was closing just as hard.
Mhm.
So I think there's going to be a handful of guys who are coming back this year with like very fresh memories of what happened last year and making sure they don't repeat that mistake.
How about clutch factor, Brett? People in the field who have the best track record of rising to the occasion in these high stakes races. Also, you, Leah, throwing it out to you as well.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Got
the
a couple.
clutch factor. Clutchness in this race is kind of an interesting one. I feel like I would say of someone who I think is really clutch is Eli Hemming.
Mhm.
Like I don't even know if it's him being clutch or just him being really good at running. Like maybe it's not even him having that good of a performance, but he's just simply that good. So it's not even like he's surprising himself or anything like that. But just his ability to come out and like last year he fully soloed the 60K, fresh in a new Terex kit, destroyed everyone, brought that into Big Alta, destroyed everyone.
Mm.
I'm curious because this is his 100K debut, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, this is so interesting to me. I just don't think there's any. I think a lot of the men in this field are hit or miss.
Yeah, like a lot of them are very hot and cold.
Yeah, like every single one, I can look at them and be like, they've had a pretty rough race in the last year, or like not their best day. Like almost every single person.
But they they could potentially podium.
Totally, it's like like Blake Slatengren, Seth Ruling, Darren Thomas. Another one, you know who I do think is consistently solid and doesn't seem to falter, but also doesn't ever seem to break that upper echelon is Trayson Knopp.
Yes. Yeah.
He's had like extremely good, progressively better results.
Yeah. You ran 748 last year.
He was 6th place last year, and he was most recently 4th at JFK, running like 5:31, which is one of the fastest times ever. So I think he's one of those guys that like has these great races, but just gets a little overshadowed because they're just like not quite good enough to break onto the podium.
Yeah, wow. Actually, yeah, Trayson has he hasn't had very many off races.
Mm-mm.
Like most of his ultra setup results are, 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah.
I would almost put him in the category, and again, this is like almost tragic, but like born in the wrong generation. Like if Trayson Knopp had existed in like 2017 in his current status, he would be like,
yeah. Well, he's still young. He's
best in the sport.
26 years old.
Wow, really? He's young.
Yeah. Young. No, he's 26. Like I think he's born in the right generation. He's just still figuring it out. I mean, to be, last year in 25 and running 748 for 6th at Black Canyon, I'm sure he thinks there's room for improvement off that, as most of these athletes hyperanalyze races, and probably a reason why he's back again this year.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like there's like 30 Traysons now, and 8 years ago there was like 6.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How about who has the most to prove coming into this race? I'll go first.
Okay.
I've got Ryan Raff first, because to me, Ryan is one of the most like raw, talented runners in this race. I'd put like him and Mackay and Eli, like I kind of put them on a pedestal. If you go and look at Ryan's body of work dating back to college, incredibly talented runner. I did say offline that he was the only person to beat David Roche last year. Beat him at the Crown King Scramble, which was notable. But if you look
that's a good stat.
Which is a great stat. Like
that's a good stat.
David was not undefeated last year. Lost to Ryan Raff at Crown King. But if you look at Ryan at some of these higher profile races like Black Canyon, I don't think he has risen to the level of his ability. I do believe he's going to do it this time around. But I do think coming into this race, given that he's a Hoka athlete, he's dabbling in sort of the professional status thing. This is his year.
You know who I feel like might have something to prove is Hans Troyer.
That's what I was going to say, him too.
Like, just after like going for it last year, like you can't go into the race this year and not go for it again. Like,
and I do feel like he's got this like next level of confidence this year after running really strong at the USATF 50 mile championships at Tussey Mountain Back, setting a course record, and then recently getting a good ultra contract. I feel like he
just signed a professional contract. Like like it's cool. You're being now supported in that way as a professional athlete, but now you get the pressure of a professional athlete. So I do believe there's something for him to prove in this race, because it's like, I have to show this field that I deserve the contract that I just signed.
Mm-hmm.
Has that raises such an interesting question. Has anyone ever toned it down? Like, if you enter the sport that way, have we seen this evolution where people like enter the sport as this sort of like racing firebrand,
Jim.
and they're like, well, yeah, I guess.
I think Jim is the perfect example of that.
But he's still front ran after like 2016 for at least 3 or 4 years.
He front ran slightly less.
Yeah.
Like, he was like mega front runner, and now he's just like normal sized front runner.
You know, another person, I don't really think they have much like have to prove themselves, but I imagine they feel like they may, is Ferdinand Clovis Arot, who was in like the top 3 at Javelina for most of the day. It was like JP Giblin, David, Ferdinand. Yeah. He had a monster fall. So he ran Javelina, ended up falling off that pace a bit. I think maybe getting like 10th place or something when it was all said and done. And then 2 weeks later ran New York City Marathon, running like 220 something low. Damn. And then 2 weeks later ran JFK and ran in the top 10 there. So, and then I think he's been in Kenya training for Black Kenya.
I was just going to say.
Yeah, interesting.
I totally overlooked his name.
Yeah.
So he's running Black Canyon.
Yeah. So I feel like he's getting progressively better. He was at Black Canyon last year, and I do think his split seemed like he must have had a rough patch in the middle, but then actually charged pretty hard later on. And he wasn't really up in the mix, but actually had a pretty strong finish. So I bet you he had some good learnings.
Yeah, he's been in Kenya for 6 weeks. Like, the places, like, he's one of the most fascinating people in terms of like where he's situated as an ultra runner. Like, the majority of his time, like in New York City proper, like you said, and then like does this 6-week stint in Kenya. Brett, are you buying or selling these Kenya training camps for Black Canyon?
I mean, the Rift Valley has got to be one of the. I mean, if it's a valley, it's also a canyon. Dude,
you know where we source all our ingredients from for Exercise Fizz? The Rift Valley.
The Rift Valley. Oh, Rift Valley water. Is that what we're going to use from? This sounds expensive. Exercise Fizz sounds like it's getting to be a little pricey, and also big carbon footprint.
Dude, excellence is costly.
Yeah, I'm still in.
Me too. Oh, of course. I mean, you can't turn around.
Yeah.
Yeah, wild. Okay. Yeah, another person, by the way, I told you guys this offline, but talk about like wild training locations. Cole Campbell, based in Elko, Nevada, which is like an otherwise, well, actually, no, it's not a totally random spot. You've got the Ruby Mountains there. But
well, yeah, because like there's a major highway that goes straight through.
Yeah, I mean it's 80, but like it is it's a destination in a place that has no destinations. It's like out in the middle of nowhere. Like when you were driving from Salt Lake to Olympic Valley for Western States, it's like one of the places that if you're driving an electric car, you're like, thank God there's a charging station here. Or you like fill up for gas and like maybe gamble.
That's like the place we stopped. Like we couldn't quite make it back after Western States without like passing out. We're like, we need to get a hotel here. And then we like check in at this like Holiday Inn. And then I'm like sitting there like, who lives in Elko, Nevada? And like, what do they do for work? They all work at the Holiday Inn. Spelled it.
I mean, maybe a good spot to train. Ruby Mountains are cool.
No, the Rubies
Yeah.
are sick. Hey, Gelfie tried to do the FKT out there, I think 5 or 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah, that doesn't
Traverse.
surprise me.
Yeah. How about dark horse speculation? Anyone coming into this race that is balling in a random way?
Okay. Sorry, Brett. I know you're supposed to lead the men's charge here, but I'm gonna.
No, go ahead. I don't think I had any dark horses written down.
This really isn't like, I don't think they're a dark horse for the win, but they're a dark horse for being in that like 3 through 10 spot. And it's Eric Sorensen.
Yeah, that's a good one.
He is always
Friend of the
up
pod.
there. Oh, really? Nice.
Kind of. He reaches out to us from time to time on like Twitter.
Thanks for listening, Eric.
Yeah.
So he has a very fast speed goat. I think he's run like 5:15 at speed goat. He was like one of the top Americans at UTMB a couple years ago for the longest time, and people were like, "Who is this guy?" And then what was it? Black Canyon last year, I think. He was in the mix for a really long time as well. So
He ran like 8 hours.
He's one of those guys that for a second you're like, "Who is this? What's he doing?" And then you're like, oh, "Okay, that's Eric." He's kind of always in the mix. Sometimes nails it, sometimes doesn't, but I think he's feeling good and has been putting in some good training. So he's my dark horse.
I want to say serial shirtless racer, but don't quote me on that.
He seems to start with the shirt, but then it's gone by the end.
Yeah. Like, for some reason, like I'm even like picturing like him at UTMB without a shirt too.
Oh, you just can't
Doesn't
stop
make-
picturing that.
Oh my, he's just so good at running. I mean, you have good range.
Definitely.
I've got 2 dark horses and then one that sort of straddles the line between dark horse and has something to prove. The 2 dark horses, the first one is Tyler Fox. It's, again, for people that may have been out of the sport for 2 or 3 years, Tyler is a great runner, snagged a golden ticket the year that John Ray took first. I think Marion Hogan also took first in that Bandera 100K. He was second, not far behind John. Really strong runner. If you go and look at his Strava, really, really fit. I mean, David Roche has been commenting on his stuff, being like, dude, like ready to throw down at Black Canyon. Really strong runner. I think he started a family a few years back, and maybe that explains sort of his ultra sign up where he's trended towards more kind of local under the radar races, but back on the golden ticket circuit, super strong. Of course, always got to throw Canyon, Yes We Canyon Woodward on there. He's going to keep getting progressively better, and we're going to keep underrating him. And he's always been in the mix at pretty much every golden ticket race he's been on the start line for. I'm not counting him out here. And then the third person who kind of straddles that line with something to prove is Darren Thomas. If you go back in time, if you go back to 2019, for example, podium at the TNF 50 in North Face, rest in peace. Really strong on like the National Golden Trail Series circuit, Broken Arrow, etc. Free agent, Solomon.
Well, maybe not. I guess we don't.
I don't know, but the Solomon purge happened.
Solomon.
He was a victim of it. Not Solomon.
Yeah.
Really strong runner and has a ton of range. Just a matter of is he healthy? Is he in it? But like, it would not shock me at all if he's on the podium for this race. He's incredibly talented. He was here crewing last year, I think, crewing or pacing. I saw him at Bumblebee, talked to him for a bit. And so, he's been on the ground level, and I guess he's here to execute. So those are my 3.
He's just scouting out. There's a handful of like pretty talented like young kids in this race. I got 3 written down who like I think would kind of fly, in that dark horse type category. But maybe not Hans Troyer because he's doing a good job making a name for himself, but still only 24 years old, like child. Adam Scholand, who we know is very good at running because he beat both myself and Mike McMonagle at the Silver State 50 mile.
Yes.
A couple years ago. So
crazy impressive race.
Very.
Oh, that was nuts, and he was running so much. I think another person, he has Strava Dim.
Was Tommy Sullivan in that race too?
Then
yeah.
Okay.
Tommy got second.
Yeah, but there was a gap.
Adam,
right? There was a pretty big gap.
Well, Adam was trying to take down a David Sinclair course record.
Wasn't there like snow on the course too? It was like pretty tough conditions.
Yeah, it was snowy.
It was terrible. It was so snowy and so much runoff, and mud, and then it got really hot. But anyways, he crushed that race. 23 years old, was running like 160 miles a week, coming off of a solid track season. He's a sub 14-minute 5K guy as well. On paper, Black Canyon should be a good race.
Dude, that's a great one.
And then the other of the young ones, I think a Carbondale person, maybe Keegan Oldani.
Oh, Jeff is going to be so happy you name dropped him.
But another
say his name.
Yeah, a solid training block as well. It seems seems wise beyond his years. I don't know him. He's perhaps probably a really
old
wise
is
person.
in his last name.
Oh yeah, you're right. But 23 again. So we've got like these young people who are probably ready to throw down with the masters.
Dude, it's so amazing that you would only know the first guy if you had done the Silver State 50 in 2023.
Yeah. I mean, if he makes it big, I'm calling that race the turning point in his career.
And he's the first athlete that we signed to Exercise Fizz.
Yes.
He's our flagship.
Yes. You heard it here first.
It's like, you're telling me you're drinking 300 grams of carbs an hour and it's bubbly water? It sounds absolutely terrible.
Okay. So you did mention Anthony Costales is out.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the only other person that I would throw in there as like a possible injury watch because they're constantly nursing the Achilles thing is Joe McConaughey, who also you talk about like he is next in line for the throne of like the almost golden ticket guy, right? Like before Cole Watson finally broke his own curse, like it's Joe, right? So got to put respect on Joe's name. He's been in the mix and like a near miss in so many different races. But I think he's healthy.
I think he's healthy.
I wonder if him and Blake are gonna kind of team up for this race.
Yep.
Exercise a little bit of team tactics.
Because
Blake was being coached by Joe. I don't know if he still is. I don't really have a reason to think he wouldn't be. So they kind of probably know each other's plans going in, and that'd be kind of cool. A little bump drafting there for any NASCAR fans out there.
It does look like they ran together today.
Yeah, so you probably chit-chatting strategy.
Yeah.
Should we get to our picks?
Yeah. I guess before we do, there isn't anyone in the men's field who's already in Western States. That would be like interrupting this golden ticket chase, right?
I don't think so. And like, is there anybody that would not take a golden ticket if they received one that you guys can think of?
Like, my only question mark would be Eli Hemming, but I also don't know why he would be racing Black Canyon if this wasn't an attempt to get a golden ticket.
Yeah, I think I heard him either on his own vlog or maybe on the Boulder Boys say like he's going here to race competition, but like if presented a golden ticket, it's a golden ticket, and that would be a hard opportunity to turn down. Not that he really wants to run 100 miles yet, but might be.
Well, because if he's here for the competition, why would he not be at Western States then for the competition?
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay. So I don't know.
I guess a question for you guys, like, let's call it mile 20.
Yep.
Who do you foresee being like the top 5 men at that point? And do you see them holding on? Like, who is the top 5 at that point, and who is going to like not be there by the finish?
Okay, I've got my I have been thinking about this actually. My top 5. My top 5 is a little weird at mile 20. I've got Zach Perrin. I've got Dave Stevens. I've got Eli Hemming. I've got Hans. And I've got Seth. Those are my 5 that are front running.
I think I've got, I don't know what mix. They're all going to be together, I bet. Eli, Hans, Seth, JP Giblin, and I think like Pecan Yu from China.
Yeah. I had not in any particular order, but Hans, Seth, Eli. I think Jupiter
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
will be right in the mix, and then Paquan Yu, I believe, will also be right up there if we're strictly speaking mile 20. But I also wouldn't be surprised. Like, what's Bumblebee? Is Bumblebee like mile 17 or 19 or
20? 1920, I think.
19. Like, it wouldn't surprise me at all that if we saw in a 5-minute range from first place plus 5 minutes, we saw 20 guys.
Mm.
Okay.
So good luck to whoever's commentating there.
Yeah, I know. I was actually thinking about that, Brett, because when we were talking about your position in the field, those early aid stations as a field commentator are so hard when you don't know which bib number is who yet, and you're trying to ID like 20 faces at once. It's impossible.
Well, last year, because the one that I was at like mile 8, one, it was snowy, and everyone was wearing extra layers, and half the bibs were covered up. And if their bibs weren't covered up with a jacket, it was covered up with mud because they fell. And it was just like watching a train go by. And it was just like, there they go. Nobody stopped.
All right.
Sorry, can I ask one more question before we go into
please.
our pick?
No, please.
Okay, so we talked about the 5 who will be leading in that front pack. Who are the 5 that are running the fastest from Table Mesa to the finish?
Craig Hunt.
I agree. That's one.
I'm gonna make an argument. Okay. If we have all of the Strava data to analyze, I'm gonna argue that the majority of those times are coming outside the top 5.
I don't think so.
I think we're going to see people in like the 6 through 11 spot who think that they're planning to run a race that's going to get them a time that's a golden ticket, and it doesn't get them that, and they're executing super well, but they just didn't engage early enough in the race.
See, I think this is at least what happened last year, and I think it'll happen similarly this year, is like 4 through 8 run very similarly to the finish, unless your name is Craig Hunt, and then you slaughter everybody from there to the finish. He moved from 9th to 4th, and then missed a golden ticket by 2 minutes, which is crazy. Yeah. So I think we're going to see a similarly close race, but I think they all run fast from there.
Okay.
All right, who do you got?
I got Mackay, Craig, Eli. This is where it gets tough.
In that order, like first, second, third.
No,
Mackay, Craig, Eli.
Not really. In any order. That's all I got. I've got 3. Those are the guys that are running fast.
Yeah.
Is that your podium?
Well, one sec. Before we get to the podiums, I gotta shout out to one thing at least. And this is the craziest Strava file that I've seen for this entire block from a guy named Tim Nooney.
Oh yeah.
And he's based out of Asheville, North Carolina. He's a great guy. I think he works in PR, so he's working with a lot of the brands in trail. He's one of those, like, you could call him a fast media guy, actually.
Is he sponsored by La Sportiva?
He's either sponsored by them or he works with them through his PR firm. I'm not sure. But anyways, 6-hour long run, 48 miles, 5,700 feet of climbing. I'm going to read the description here. One more big race day simulator before the taper. This is on January 26th. Oh, three sets of fartleks, 3 by 7.5, 6.5, 5.5. Feeling real good, and fueling was on point. I had a fade on the last climb. Good feedback for dialing it back just a little bit. It was a long day out there. This is one of the more ballsy training runs 2 weeks before. This is like what John Ray did, 2 weeks before Western 2 years ago. Really curious. Brett, what do you think? Is this going to pan out for race day? What's your prediction?
I mean, it sounds like a race effort.
Yeah.
And like it sounded like some of those runs that John Ray did before Western States, the year John Ray didn't do great at Western States.
Mm-hmm.
Prove me wrong.
Yeah.
Prove me wrong.
And then one last thing, Ultra Running Rivalry. This actually was stated on the Boulder Boys podcast in the most recent episode. Eli versus Seth.
Yeah, that's a good one.
They're beefing.
Don't they both have like kind of triathlon type backgrounds?
Yes, I think.
Eli for sure. I thought Seth came from the tri world as well.
Is a wizard on the bike, I think.
Yeah, who's going to be the better? Was once multi-sport athlete, but now just singular sport athlete.
I have one more question.
Oh, please.
If Craig Hunt or Mackay Clemens wins, like, what happens? Do they get a sponsorship out of this?
They better. It can go two ways. They both end in sponsorship, I think.
Mhm.
You either sign that deal right after Black Canyon, or hedge your bets, go solo until States, bank on crushing it at States, which would be like going the Anthony Costales route.
Mm-hmm.
But if you win this race, I think you're going to have the choice.
I've gotten so cynical. If I'm a brand, I'm picking who's creating the most content in the top 10, who's playing the Instagram algorithm, who's vlogging, who's podcasting.
Hans.
I'm signing them. Yeah.
Eli's doing a good job.
Yeah.
He is. Their vlogging is great. They were great on the Boulder Boys too. All right. Our podiums. I'll go first. I had a really tough time with third, and I don't want to name drop and not take a stand here. So I'm gonna take Timoteo Tollefson in third. I've got Mackay Clemens in second, and I've got Ryan Raff in first.
Wow.
Yeah, I've got Ryan. I'm taking veteran experience, but predominantly I am taking raw talent with the exception of Eli. I would put Eli in that same category of raw talent. But I think it's Mackay's time. I think he's been knocking at the door. If you look at his Strava, he has all the tools. And I would say the same thing about Ryan.
Wait, where'd you put him?
Who?
Mackay.
Second.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Mackay in second. Yeah.
Okay.
He's doing this thing. He's doing the damn thing.
All right. My podium.
5. Wait, no, I go.
Okay, go.
I'm doing 5 again because I did 5 for the women, and it's just.
I do have 5 written down for the men.
Okay. Hans in 5th. Hans Troyer. 4th, Tim Tollefson. Sadly, missing a golden ticket by 1 spot. However, Eli Hemming will be somewhere in that top 3 and would maybe roll it down sometime. So with golden tickets, if you give it up, if you take it but then give it up sometime, I think before May 1st, it rolls down to the next spot. So that would be an awesome story. It'd be awesome if Tim got a golden ticket, but in this case, if somebody gave it up and he got it. So Tim's in 4th. We're gonna do Eli Hemming in 3rd, Mackay Clemens in 2nd, Craig Hunt in 1st.
Okay, Craig Hunt with the win. All right, we all have different people winning this race. 5th, I've got Jupiter Carrera Casas. 4th, I have Craig Hunt. 3rd, I've got Seth. I think Seth is one of I think Seth belongs in the uber talented category.
He does.
Wait. Who's Seth rolling?
What?
I'm just joking.
Is this a knock on the Boulder Boys pod, not knowing any of the names?
That was a good one. The real ones know.
He doesn't listen to the Singletrack pod.
Go on.
He doesn't even like trail running, really.
Yeah. He just does it because he's good at it. I've got Seth in 3rd. I've got Mackay in 2nd. So also taking a golden ticket. And then I think Eli Hemming's going to win this race. Yeah. Just seeing him run the 60K last year and looking so comfortable on the course. I feel like that was just like a 60% effort training run for this year. It was a good scouting mission for him. It was so fast. It kickstarted an amazing season. So, and I bet he learned some things at JFK as well.
I think that was a good experience for him to have actually at that point of his career as well, as he's stepping up in distance. It's nice to have those hard days, even though they suck, but to have the learnings out of them is beneficial.
Awesome. Well, I cannot wait to follow this race, Brett. Super cool that you're going to be on the ground reporting. At some point we'll have to get together to do a recap on this thing. Leah, you're going to be at Rufa, right?
I'm at Rufa. I'll be running the 6 hour and then manning the base aid station. And luckily we have a what's it called? Starlink there, but I feel like I'm going to miss all the meat of what's happening. So I might need to get a recap from Brett afterwards.
Yes. Yep. Well, hey, this has been fun as always. Appreciate you both. And we'll do this again for Canyons, I suspect. So until next time, Singletrack Pod, Finn, Leah, Brett, out.